Hello, my name's Rich from Let's Go, and what I want to do is outline for you a headline view, a new model for change, an elegant and simple way of looking at change called the Let's Go change loop. It draws on a lot of wisdom from a lot of change models. I've spent the last year, I guess, engaged in a live experience of change with a global pandemic like you. I've also just become a father, and I've been coaching teams through big changes to their organizations and new changes in ways of working. And all of this has had me really immersed in what change feels like and how we navigate it well. And whilst drawing on lots of other thinkers and models, from design thinking to Kübler-Ross, Satir, Gestalt approaches to change, anthropological approaches to change, I still want to say that there's maybe something refreshing and clear we can add to the picture. A few points or foundational points of a good change model before we get in. Models are there to help us see the world more clearly and to guide us to make better choices. This is happening in a world where change is happening all the time. It's not a rare occurrence that we can create a big drama about. We are going through changes. Our teams, our organizations, our lives are changing. And change, it takes us up and down. It's not a straightforward process. It's a roller coaster, if you like. And it's not a linear or mechanical process. It's something that unfolds and has an organic quality to it. But that said, there are distinct phases or stages to change, and we get to choose how we move to change, and that can be either skillfully or not skillfully. Like in a healthy, grounded way we can approach change, or we can also struggle, fight, and hide from change. Change is something we get better at over time, and also change makes us better. So as we go through changes, we get wiser. And so all of this gives me a different, a different shape to change that I want to propose. And that is a series of loops or a spiral that's moving upwards. This properly represents the ups and downs of change. But there's also this wonderful book called Signs of Life that looks at what different shapes evoke, and this is what it has to say about the spiral. The spiral symbolizes the process of growth and evolution, the process of coming to the same point again and again, but at a different level, so that everything is seen in a new light. The result is a new perspective on issues, people, and places. So a spiral evokes the right thing when we think about change. And Maya Angelou says, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. And so change is this upward movement. It's the movement in which our confidence and effectiveness increases over time as we go through a series of changes. Now, within that, our confidence and our effectiveness can plummet within an individual change. So then, we can zero in on a particular change, a particular loop that we go through as we change. It starts with a trigger, a moment or an event in which the change begins. Now, we might not even be aware of it at this stage, but think of the global pandemic, right? There is a moment when this is triggered off, and even though the rest of us are living our lives, there's a trigger. And so then we enter a phase of change which we could call awareness. And in awareness, we're coming to terms with confronting the reality of this change, but it's not yet hit us. Then there's a moment, and we move from awareness into a phase of disorientation. That is that the old ways we had of orientating ourselves no longer work. And we don't yet know what will work. So this is a degree of, uncertainty, right? Things have changed and we don't yet know how they piece together. At some point, we meet a transition point. Now, this really comes with a massive nod to Virginia Satir, whose model talks about a transforming idea. And this transition point is normally some kind of insight or perspective shift in us to our situation where we move from disorientation to reorientation, to a beginning to build what the new situation looks like now things have changed. Reorientation isn't an event, it's a phase, it's a labor, it's a work. And then we go through a moment when that reorientation is complete to some degree and we can begin on integration. Now, integration is consolidating what we have learned through that process and maybe going to implement some of it. A key thing about this approach to change, or this way of looking at change as a loop, is to say there are healthy and unhealthy pathways through change. So at every stage of change, we can fight it or we can flee it, but neither of those is going to help us. What we need to do is stay grounded and engage with it. So in the awareness phase, we can resist, right? Or we can fear change, but actually what we really need to do is accept it. As we go into disorientation, there's a temptation to struggle and to stop things falling apart and hold them together, or a temptation to despair. But neither of these stances will help us. What we need to be in is our curiosity. We need to inquire, to ask the question, to examine what is happening as we disorientate. This isn't the place for solutions, because until we've gone through some kind of transition where we can start to make sense of things again, we're not ready. We just need to stay curious. But as we reorientate, an appropriate way to behave would be to be adaptive, to adapt to what happens and try things out, experiment, learn. Now, an unhealthy approach to change would be to try and force the first solution that we find, or to avoid the responsibility for doing the complex and difficult work of reorientating. And then as we complete reorientation, the temptation might be to fixate on that as the one true solution, and now nothing will ever change. To fix things down. We've done the change, now we're going to be stable. And another bad pathway would be to try and forget that the change even happened and act as if nothing's changed. What we need to do is consolidate, to bring together what we've learned from this changing experience, this experience of change, and kind of reflecting on what's happened and looking forward to what we can implement now because of this change. What is the new world we're entering into? And really, this consolidation will allow us to face the next change that comes with more confidence and more effectiveness. So this is the Let's Go Change loop. I really think this is a helpful addition to the ways we think about change. Change is always happening. It's a roller coaster. It's something that we can get better at. Now, I don't imagine that any of us move through change in a purely grounded, pragmatic way when it's big changes. So we don't just accept, inquire, adapt, consolidate through the phases. We're always jumping around between the battling and the avoiding. So we do a bit of struggling, a bit of resisting, a bit of fearing, forgetting, fixating, forcing, avoiding, and a little bit of despair. And that's normal. But when we can map it out and we can see that for what it is, which is unhealthy and unhelpful ways through change, maybe we can find ourselves with more ground and more balance. That's the Let's Go Change loop. Change is always happening. It's a wild ride, but if there's one thing that's true, it's that change is going to keep happening to us, and we need to get good at navigating it.